the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccer Files Canada. Welcome to Series 20, the 2023 African Cup. This episode is part 2 on the players of Tanzania, the final selections. Here we go. Hello and welcome back to the International Soccer Preview by Soccer Files Canada. We are back for part 2 of our mediacast on the players of the 2023 African Cup. This episode deals with the final selections of Tanzania. In part 1, we compiled a list of players and their likelihood of reaching the squad, and that was based mostly on their participation over the past 2 years. However, we did consider a few other factors as well. We ran out of time to do part 2 for some of the teams of the African Cup, so today we're going back to review that to complete the collection, as it were. So the tournament has been played by this point, but we're going to take the perspective of just before the tournament here, as if we were doing the media cast when we intended to. So this media cast is divided into 3 sections. Section 1 is some preliminary information, including a look at the games we did after part 1. After part 1. Section 2 is the main part of the media cast, a review of the preliminary and final roster that was released, which we will compare to the list that we compiled in part 1. And in section 3, we will summarize, reviewing surprise selections and non-selections, as well as new players, and also updating on injuries. And then we're going to end with a revised version of our Spotlight review, our predictions of who we think will be starters. And if you're watching the YouTube feed, you will see that I am proudly wearing a Tanzania shirt. My niece Kiara, who's done a couple of media casts with me here, took her second trip to Uganda. She has a kind of a teaching thing between the Canadian and Ugandan government going on there. So took her second trip and took a trip to Tanzania, bought me a shirt. What a doll. So that's it. Let's go on to part 1 or section 1. Some preliminary information really. About the squad. So the teams were allowed to bring 27 players to the Cup. That actually was initially 23, but in mid-December it was raised to 27, and Tanzania took advantage of that, bringing or filling all 27 slots. Those filled from a 53-man preliminary squad that they put out on December 20th. And so that meant 26 players would have to be cut from that preliminary squad, and we will let you know who they are. In terms of games, so I think actually we may have talked about November games in part 1, because I think we did it after the November games were played. Nevertheless, we're going to look at the last 3 games Tanzania played. Those are 2 World Cup qualifiers in November, and then 1 pre-tournament game. Ooh, I'm a little bit behind in my graphics here. There we go. So 2 World Cup qualifiers in November. The first one was against Niger. We're not really interested in the results here. We're interested in the players who lined up. But just for your information, that was a 1-0 away win, so a pretty good result. Always good to win away in Africa. And then the second was against Morocco, who they'll meet in the group stage here. That was a 2-0 loss at home. Not really surprising. Morocco, a strong team. Let's see if they can improve on that in the tournament here. Following that, though, and something we weren't able to mention in part 1, was a pre-tournament friendly in January, just before the tournament there. That was played in Egypt, actually, and it was a 0-2 away loss. But again, we're not so much interested in that as in who lined up. So that may give us some insight as to who we can expect to see in the Cup lining up as starters. That is coming with the Spotlight review in section 3, but our main order of business here is section 2, and to compare the list we compiled in part 1 to see who made it to the squad and who didn't. So let us begin with the manager, Adel Amrouche, or Amrouchi. And again, we did give more information on these characters, the manager and the players, in part one. We won't be repeating any of that here, but Amrouche not dismissed or anything before the tournament, despite a bit of chaos in the lineups, I must say. But Adel Amrouche will be leading them through the cup. For goalkeepers, then, we had no definite candidates, or no candidates at the definite level, but we had two likely candidates, Aishi Manula and Beno Kakolanya, and then two possible candidates in Kesi Kawawa and Metacha Nata. So four candidates there. We expect that they will bring three. Let's take a look. And we have both likely candidates selected. So Aisha Manula and Beno Kakolanya. And then the first of the possible candidates, Kesi Kawawa, selected, but Metacha Nata just making the preliminary squad, but not the final cut there. They also added one name to the preliminary squad. We're going to put these on the list here, not least of all because they may be an indication as to who we'll see if Tanzania makes the next cup. So perhaps peering into the future here, new candidate Abdul Wahid Mshari, making the preliminary squad there. We won't give any information or much information on these players, but he's a Tanzania-based player, and again, someone we might see down the road. Let's take a look at the games as the last order of business for this position, and see in November that it was Manula playing the first game, but Kawawa, the possible candidate there, playing the second game against Morocco. So that is interesting, and maybe the game against Egypt in January will give some indication. It was Manula, Aisha Manula, starting. So we probably do expect him to be the starter, and that kind of reinforces it, despite scoring an own goal in that game against Egypt. On to defense we go, and the central defense. And we have quite a few candidates here, two at the definite level, Bakari Mwamnyeto and Dixon Job, or Dixon Job, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Those two at the definite level. At the likely level, one candidate, Ibrahim Hamad, and then two possible candidates, Abdi Banda and Lusajo Mwikenda. We have three possible but unlikely candidates, but I think I'm going to not overload the listener with names here, but rather go through those players once we take a look at who made the squad. So back to the top then, our two definite candidates, Bakari Mwamnyeto was selected for the final squad, as was Dixon Job. The likely candidate, Ibrahim Hamad, also selected. We expect 5 or 6 candidates to be selected in central defense, and actually both of our possible candidates selected as well. So Abdi Banda and Lusajo Mwikenda, all of our candidates making it. Let's look at the possible but unlikely, because one of the three candidates did make it. Let's go through them one by one. The first on the list was Abdul Razak Mohammed Hamza. He did not even make the preliminary squad. Not surprising, because these are possible but unlikely candidates. Rather, it is surprising that the second one, Abdul Malik Zakaria, did make the final squad there. So he'll come up in section 3 as one of our surprises. And the third candidate, Kennedy Juma, was selected for the preliminary squad, but did not make the final cut here. We did have two candidates at the seemingly off the squad level. Neither of them made it to the even the preliminary squad, so we won't talk about them. But we will talk about two new candidates. In fact, one of them made it to the final squad, giving us 7 central defenders brought. That's quite a lot. This new player is Miano van der Bos, and he also goes by Miano Danilo. I think there's a bit of disclarity with his name, and Wikipedia is saying Miano Danilo van der Bos, but I doubt his name will end up being that. We'll see what they say in the cup, because he might get on the field there. We also have a new candidate who made the preliminary. Oh, no, I will say a little bit about Van den Bos there. He is 21 years old and plays for Vienna in Spain. It's not a team I'm familiar with, I must say. However, prior to that, he was with PSV Eindhoven in the Netherlands, and Van den Bos, as you might guess by his name, was born in the Netherlands. First appeared on the bench there in January 2024 in that friendly with Egypt. So here he is, and we'll see if he gets on the field. It's tough going because he has 6 guys ahead of him vying for the positions. But the new candidate who made the preliminary squad is Lamek Lawi. But he didn't make the final cut there. So, wow, a lot of candidates. Let's look at the games and see how it lined up. So just 2 central defenders, or I shouldn't say just, but 2 central defenders in the game against Tanzania. And it was one of our definite candidates, Mwam Nieto, and the likely candidate, Ibrahim Hamad. There. We do see the other definite candidate, though, Dixon Job, playing as the right back there. So I think we had that in section, or in part 1, where over the last 2 years we also saw him there. Against Morocco, it was a 3-man central defense, and it was Mwam Nieto in the middle and Hamad, so both of those players appearing again. And it was the possible candidate, Lusajo Mwikenda, playing on the left side, or sorry, the right side of that 3-man defense there. So Job not showing up here, but rather Mwikenda getting a start. Let's look at the final game, the one just before the tournament, and that is Mwam Nieto and Hamad again in a 2-man central defense. But here we have Mwikenda playing as the right back there. So those seem to be the 3 main candidates, or 3 candidates. Well, we'll talk about that in the spotlight review at the end. But it looks like the extra central defenders they brought along are covering especially that right back position. Anyway, we're going to move to the left back position before we look at the right back. And we have a definite candidate here in Novatus Miroshi. Novatus Miroshi, yes, a definite candidate. No likely candidates for left back, but 3 possible candidates. The first, Nixon Kibabaj, the second, Mohamed Hussein, and the third, Charles David Luhendi. Let's see who made the squad here. And we do have, unsurprisingly, Novatus Miroshi making the cut. Nixon Kibabaj just made the preliminary squad, not the final cut. Mohamed Hussein, and now I'm seeing his name actually being given as Mohamed Husseini. So we'll have to sort that out, but it's my main source there that now has Husseini, so we'll call him that for the time being. Did make the final cut. Sorry to keep you in suspense there. Did make the final cut. Charles David Luhende, on the other hand, not even selected for the preliminary squad. So Kibabaj, Husseini and Luhende, all different fates for them. We have a new candidate, though, to add to the list. He only made the preliminary squad, and it is Adam Kasa. And he is, I believe he's Swedish born. I don't have that confirmed here, but he does play in Sweden, at least. Again, fairly small clubs there, and he's 30 years old. just making the preliminary squad here. I don't know why I'm giving details uh, on a player who didn't make the squad. Okay, so we have on the left what we would expect, two candidates. Novatus Miroshi, our definite candidate, and the possible candidate Mohamed Husseini. Let's take a look at the games and see who lined up. So it was Miroshi who we expect to see starting in the first game against Niger. And oh my God, something dreadful just happened. I clicked on the button and I clicked the X button by mistake. Anyway, I have it back now. So the game against Morocco, Miroshi also started that game. However, he got a red card in that game, or two yellow cards equaling a red. And I believe he can't work that off in the friendly. So he may be unavailable for the first game of the Cup here because that was a World Cup qualifier that he got the card in. So, however, he was not selected for the friendly before the Cup. Mohamed Husseini was the starter there, maybe in preparation for starting in the Cup. We'll have to see how that plays out. But there we go, left back position covered, and we move on to the right back position where we've been seeing central defenders covering the position. Let's look at the candidates we have, though. None at the definite level, but we have Haji Manoga at the likely level, and at the possible level, Kibwana Shomari. And then two at the possible but unlikely level, who I'll deal with as they come up. So let's go back to the top. Well, the top means the likely category here. Haji Manoga making the squad. But the possible candidate, Kibwana Shomari, not even making the preliminary squad there. The two possible but unlikely candidates, Shomari Kapombe, he didn't make the preliminary squad even, but the other one, Israel Patrick Mwenda, at least made the preliminary squad there. Again, here, two candidates that we had seemingly off the squad, which we won't mention because they were not selected even for the preliminary squad, but two new candidates here, and actually they're brothers, both coded as right back. The first one is Zion Nditi. Zion Nditi is the younger brother. And Roberto Nditi, he plays in Scotland. He's the older brother. Actually, he was born in England. I'm not sure about Zion, but there's 5 years between them. Anyway, Roberto Nditi, perhaps names for the future, because Zion is only 18 years old, Nditi 23 years old. So they could come into play in the future. And that's really part of the reason we're listing these candidates or name checking them. Anyway, all in all, we just have the one candidate for right back, that is Haji Noga, and we've seen that he was not the starter on the right. I'm just going to see if he was on the field at all. He was actually playing as a central midfielder. The center midfielder of a 4-3-3 formation was Manoga. And that's why they brought in a central defender, Dixon Job, to cover his position on the right there. In the second game against Morocco, though, it is Manoga lining up as the right back in a 5-4-1, very defensive formation. Finally, the game against Egypt, we saw that it was central defender Mwikenda lining up in his as the right back, and Minoga not on the field in this case. So yeah, tough to make predictions there because it seemed to change every game. Okay, that I believe is the end of the defense. Yes, we have no general defenders. We will have a couple of general midfielders to look at the end of the midfield section, but let's move to defensive midfielder here. Here we had no candidates at the definite or likely level. So our first defensive midfielder is at the possible level. It is Faisal Salam, one of the few players here who were actually in the African Cup in 2019. There's a lot of turnover from that tournament, but Faisal Salam on the roster here. We also had a possible but unlikely candidate, Ali Masengi, and then seemingly off the squad, the veteran Erasto Nioni, who of course was part of the 2019 team. Anyway, in terms of who made the squad, only Faisal Salam there was selected for the squad. Ali Mathangi and Erasto Nioni not even selected for the preliminary squad. But we do have a couple of new candidates here. The first one, Adolf Bitageko. Adolf Bitageko, and the other one, Yusuf Kagoma. Both of those, no, actually, Bitageko interestingly plays in Iceland and has done so since 2018. He's 25 years old, so again, we might see him in the future. Gakomo, on the other hand, playing in Tanzania there. Okay, so just one defensive midfielders. We're not going to look at the lineups yet until we cover central midfielders, and we have oh my goodness, I don't know what happened there, because we have no one on our list, but I do have players, so I guess I'll fill the list here as we go. And we have no definite candidates for central midfield, but a likely candidate. Oh, my graphics are all messed up here. Okay, we're back in action here. A likely candidate in Mudathar Yahya. At least we did talk about this in part one, even if the graphics got confused here. In fact, three likely candidates here. Mudathar Yahya the first, Ben Starkey the second, and the third, Sospita Bajana. All three of those players at the likely level. And then we have two at the possible level, Muzamiru Yasin and Charles Mamombwa. Charles Mamombwa, the Australian-based player. And then we had one at the possible but unlikely level, Baraka Majagoro. Okay, those are our candidates, and if you're watching the YouTube feed, I've already given it away with the colors as to whether they made it. In short, the first five players I mentioned did make it, so that is Mudathir Yahya, Ben Starkey, and Sospita Banjana, the three likely candidates, all selected for the final squad, and also the two possible candidates, Muzamiro Yasin and Charles Mamombwa, both selected for the final squad. The possible but unlikely candidate, Baraka Majagoro, just making the preliminary squad, not the final cut there. But we have a new candidate who actually did make the final squad, and that is Mo Sagaf. Mo, I believe, is short for Mohammed there. His full name is Mohammed Sagaf, but I've seen on a few sites that he is listed as Mo Sagaf, and he plays in England. He's been playing for several clubs in England and appeared on the squad in January 2024 in that friendly with Egypt. And he's not the last one we're going to see either. So 6 central midfielders there. And then one defensive midfielder, so 7 in the middle here. Again, that's probably one more than we usually expect, but let's take a look and see who is playing in the squad. I'll actually tell you the formations here. So it's a 4-3-3 against Niger. and we saw that the right back Minogo was playing in the center of the three-man midfield there. On his right is Salam, Faisal Salam, or possible defensive midfielder here, and Banjana, Sospita Banjana, playing as the left midfielder. Against Morocco, it's a 5-4-1 formation, very defensive, and we have gone actually through the 5 defenders. That is actually the 3 central defenders and the left back and right backs that we expected. In the middle, we see Bajana as the only candidate. Kind of left centre in that 4-man midfield. Bajana playing as the right winger is Mamombwa, and I believe we saw him playing as a right attacking midfielder during this period as well. So Bajana, they're the only one to get 2 games, and Mamombwa seems to be making inroads into the team, but this is the only start among the 2 games. No, we have 1 more to go. Okay, in the third game, it's also a 4-3-3 formation. And here we have Yaya in the middle. So that is our likely central defender. Salam again on the playing as the right midfielder, Faisal Salam. And that's it. We're going to meet Mao, who's also playing in the midfield in 2 of these games, but he's coded as an attacking midfielder, so we'll come back to him. So yes, maybe Salam seems the most likely there in terms of appearances of getting a start, but nobody with more than 2 starts there. Okay, and let's move on to left and right midfield. Well, we had no candidates for left midfield or right midfield, but we actually have new candidates being brought in, 1 for each position. On the left midfield, we have new candidate Tariq Yusuf, and he only made the preliminary squad. He is an English-based player. On the right, though, the new candidate was actually selected for the squad. So that is Tarin Alarakia, also based in England, and he was on the roster for the January game, so just coming in right at the end there. Alarakia was born in England and got his first cap there in 2020 or in the January game. I believe he came in as a sub, and in fact we'll check on that right away whether either of these players made it onto the field. So of course they weren't around for the November games, so we only have the January game to check, and yes, not starting that game. I'll just pop down and see. Alarakia came in at halftime in that game. So they're giving him a try. So we probably won't see him as a starter, but he plays for Wealdstone in England. That's a fairly small club. So I don't imagine he'll be a starter. Let's move on up to the upper left quadrant of the field. So depending on the formation, that'll be left winger, left attacking midfielder, or even left forward in a 4-3-3 formation. And here we have no definite or no candidates at the definite level either. We have Kibu Deni or Kibu Dennis, not sure how to pronounce it, at the likely level, and Abdul Hamisi Suleiman at the possible level. We also had Faridi Musa at the seemingly off the squad. I'm not sure why we actually left him on the list there. But let's go over and see who made it. So Kibu Deni, the possible candidate, was selected for the final squad. Possible candidate Abdul Hamisi Suleiman, just making the preliminary squad there, and Faridi Musa not selected even for the preliminary squad. So whatever reason we left him on, therefore, didn't work out. We do have two new candidates, unsurprisingly, since there's only one candidate here, and we did note in part one that this area was quite thin. Edwin Balua is the first of these, and he plays in Tanzania. And the second one is Amal Pellegrino. He's a Norwegian-born player. He plays for Bodo Glimt in Norway, but both of those players only making the preliminary squad. So that leaves us with just Kibu Denny over here, and let's take a look and see. I wouldn't be surprised if they drafted players from different positions in here. Actually, they did. It's the central midfielder Momombwa. That's the Australian-based player, starting as the left forward in the 4-3-3 formation. I didn't notice that when we were looking at the central midfield. In the second game, it's a 5-4-1 formation, so it will be an attacking winger, and it's a player, an attacking midfielder who we're going to meet later playing over there. However, Kibu Dennis is playing as the centre forward in that 5-4-1 formation there, and however does not appear in the pre-tournament friendly with Egypt, the 4-3-3 formation. Again, we will meet the player in that position shortly. Okay, so that is the left upper quadrant of the field. Let's go over to the right. And here we have a definite candidate in Simon Msuva, one of my favorite middle names in the world. His middle name is Happy God, Simon Happy God Msuva. A definite candidate here, and then we have that's it over here, so very thin on this side too. And then we have just seemingly off the squad, Thomas Ulumwengu, veteran of the 2019 African Cup, but again seemingly off the squad. And Simon Msuva was selected as we would expect, and Thomas Ulumwengu not even making the preliminary squad. Ulumwengu, sorry, I pronounced that wrongly the first time. Okay, so Simon Msuva, the only candidate over here, and no new candidates to add even. So really relying on him over here. And in the first game, the 4-3-3 formation against Niger, he did play where expected as the right forward. In the second game, not on the field, actually, Msuvu. And against Egypt, he is back, but in this case, he is the left forward in the 4-3-3 formation. So Simon Msuvu, someone we do expect to see in the starting lineup. Okay, let's go on to the forward line, and that actually begins with kind of central attacking midfielder, and this is where we meet as a likely candidate, Himid Mao Nkami, who we did see playing in the midfield there, and we'll review that. So no definite candidates here, but Mid-Mao Nkami at the likely level, and then two players at the possible level, Maurice Abraham and John Raphael Boko. So Nkami, Himid Mao Nkami, and I'm saying the name because I see it given in various forms here. Sometimes Himid Mao, sometimes Himid Nkami. He did make the final squad, as did Maurice Abraham, the first of the possible candidates, but John Raphael Boko not even making the preliminary squad there. We do have a new candidate here, Ayub Idrissa Bilali, added to the preliminary squad. He's played in Tanzania, actually plays in Tanzania now, but did play for a team in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Gorazdi. I had never heard of that team. It's very rare where I add a team to the list that I have of clubs, but Gorazde in Bosnia-Herzegovina was one of them. Anyway, he came back, Bilali, to play in Tanzania. And that leaves us with two candidates here then who made the squad, Himidnau Nkami and Maurice Abraham. Let's take a look at the games to see if they got onto the field. Well, we do know that Nkami got onto the field because we've mentioned him. That wasn't in the first game, and neither of these players starting against Niger. But in the second game, we see Mao in that. It's a 5-4-1 formation, so he is the right central midfielder there, Mao. Also Abraham on the field. He is the left attacking winger in that formation. So both of them getting on the field there. And in the third game, just before the tournament, we see Mao as a left midfielder, but Abraham not appearing in that game. So it looks like Mao has a good shot at being a starter here. And let's go to the forward line, because we have no players coded as secondary strikers, but quite a few at this level. Only one at the definite level, that's Mbwana Samata. None coded as likely, or none in the likely category, but three in the possible category: Joshua Mwakasaba, George Mpole, and Clement Mzizi. And we also have three at the possible but unlikely level. But again, I won't. I'll go through the names as we go here, so as to not overload. Samata, unsurprisingly selected for the squad. Mbwana Samata. With the three possible candidates, none of them actually making the final squad. So Joshua Mwakasaba, just making the preliminary squad. The middle candidate, George Mpole, not even making that preliminary squad. And Clement Mzizi also on the preliminary squad, but not making the final cut. Among the possible but unlikely players, just one of them making the preliminary squad. That was Kama Saeed, or sometimes called Saeed, Kama Saeed. He made the preliminary squad, but the other two, Calvin Pius John and Adi Yusuf, not even making the preliminary squad, along with a couple of candidates who we have on our soccer files list, seemingly off the squad, not making it, so we won't introduce them. However, we do have four players to introduce, and actually the first of these did make the squad. The first of them is Cyprian Kachweli, and he is the one who made the squad. He appeared on the bench for the first time in this January friendly with Egypt, and he's just 18 years old, and he's right here in Canada. He plays for the Vancouver Whitecaps kind of B team there, having moved over from Azam, one of the main teams in Tanzania. So kind of interesting there. The other three candidates only made the preliminary squad, so we'll just name check them here without going into detail. Mathayo Anton Simon is the first one. Adam Salamba is the second one. And the third one is Omar Abbas Mvungi. And actually, he is just coded as an attacker, hasn't played enough for my sources to really know what position he has. I do have a couple of other players to talk about too. The first, I might as well get this out of the way, is Mark John Korteng. Mark John Korteng. He was listed on the preliminary roster, but I couldn't find him. I see a couple of Ghanaian players called Korteng, even one of them called Mark Korteng, but it doesn't seem to be this player. But I'll just leave his name out here, perhaps, if he comes into the team. Okay, so let me just summarize. Among all those names, we actually don't have that much. We just have the definite forward Mbwana Samata, and then the newcomer Cyprian Cachuele. Those are the only two candidates we have as forward. So a lot of positions there in the forward line, pretty thin. Let's take a look at the games, our last order of business in section 2. In the first game against Niger, it is what we expect. Samata playing as the centre forward in that 4-3-3 formation. In the second game, we've already seen that it's actually left winger. Oh, I'm a bit lost in my spot. Denny in the spot there. Kibu Denny playing as the sole forward in a 5-4-1 formation. And then in the game Egypt and Tanzania, we do see Samata starting again, but this time he's a right forward, and the player, the centre forward, is someone I wouldn't have expected at all, and that is Starkey. Playing as the forward, the central midfielder Ben Starkey lining up as the centre forward in that 4-3-3 formation. So, well, if they're going to throw stuff like that at me, it's going to make it pretty hard to predict. But let's move on then. That is the end of section 2, our look at the players who made the squad. And we're going to, in section 3, just kind of begin by summarizing that, and just let me get my document prepared here. So we begin with notable non-selections, and there are none. So that means all of the players we had categorized as definite or likely were selected for the final squad. So no names there. Surprise inclusions, just one. That is central defender Abdul Malak Zakaria. We had him as a possible but unlikely candidate there, but he was selected for the squad. Okay, anyway, I'll move on. I was going to say why he was possible but unlikely, but I'll skip that because we do have a lot to talk about with new players. 4 new players added to the squad in January. And the first of them is Miano van den Bos. He's a central defender born in the Netherlands, sometimes known as Miano Danilo. So we'll have to see what they call him in the cup. And he is playing in Spain right now for a small club, Villena, but did play for PSV Eindhoven, or at least was on their roster. So kind of an exciting prospect there. The second is a central midfielder, Mo Sagaf, and he plays for a smaller club in England, just as the third one does, Charin Alarkia. Both of those players with small clubs in England, and Alarkia at least born in England. I'm not sure about Sagaf there. And the fourth one, Cyprian Cachuele, playing in Canada, where I'm doing this mediacast from, and but he was with Azam in Tanzania before moving to Vancouver Whitecaps there. So 4 players, whether they'll get on the field or not remains to be seen, but I kind of hope so. They definitely do look like reasonably good candidates for the future. Okay, the second part of section 3 is an update on any injuries. In part 1, we didn't mention any injuries. We didn't see any players who were under an injury risk. And in part 2, no injuries came up. So there were no non-selections due to injuries there. The only thing I might add here is the red card handed to left back Miroshi. So that was in the second November game against Morocco. As we said during the media cast here, he can't work that off with the friendly against Egypt, so will probably be suspended for the first game. It was 2 yellow cards, so it'll probably just be a 1-game suspension. So that is the closest thing to an injury that we have. So we can move on to section or to the spotlight review. If you're looking on the YouTube, what you see before you is what we had at the end of part one. The ones that we thought would be the starters, or if we're very confident about that, the name is in a green highlight. And if we think it's a potential starter, kind of possible to likely, but we have some doubt about it, it's a blue. And for the sake of listeners, I'm just going to call that a likely starter, but it actually ranges anywhere from kind of, likely. A little more than possible, but not quite definite. I think likely is a good word for that situation. Let's begin. So back after part one, we had a little bit of doubt about Adel Amrouche, or Amrouche as the manager, because there was a bit of chaos on the team, which we still see in some positions here. Anyway, now that we're closer to the cup, we're more confident that he won't be replaced. So we will change him to green. Adel Amrouche leading them through the cup. Goalkeeper, we had in blue likely candidate Aisha Manula and Beno Kakolanya. However, I wonder if we did look at the November games, because we saw Manula start the first November game and the pre-tournament game. So he is our favorite pick there. However, Kakolanya didn't get any start there. Rather, it was Kwesi Kawawa, the newcomer, getting the start. So we're going to replace Kwesi Kawawa, and we wouldn't put him equal with Manula there. I'd say we give Manula about a 2/3 chance, and Kwesi Kawawa a 1/3 chance there. Maybe even a bit stronger on Manula there. Okay, central defense. We had three names on the list: Bakary Momnieto, Ibrahim Hamad, and Dixon Job. We're going to change that. We did have Momnieto in green. We were confident, so we remain confident about him. We're upping our confidence level for Ibrahim Hamad, because he appeared in all three games prior to the cup. And Dixon Job, we're going to take off the list. He did play as a right back, but he didn't play in central defense. So we have some doubts that he'll be a starter. So he's off the list. Left back, we had Novatus Miroshi. That's the player who got the red card. We had full confidence that he would be the starter until he got that red card. So we think we got the rules right in thinking that he'll be suspended for the first game. So we're going to replace him. Now we think Mohamed Husseini, basically the backup, will definitely be the starter, but we do expect Miroshi to come back in once he's worked off his suspension. Right back is a little more difficult to decide. We did see the player quoted as a right back, Haji Minoga, starting there, but only in one of the three games. But we also saw him starting in the midfield. So we're going to put him in blue. We think he'll be a good chance of being a starter, maybe not as a right back, maybe in the midfield. But I don't want to go too much into the weeds here. We are removing Dixon Job from the position. I'm just leaving it as Haji Minoga as kind of possible to likely in blue. Central midfield, we actually were so uncertain after the first at the end of part one, which is why we thought the manager might be in a bit of danger, because things seemed quite unsettled. But we do kind of have formed some opinions over the course of the last three games. So we actually, these three players, Faisal Salam, the defensive midfielder, Sospita Bajana, and the attacking midfielder, Himid Mao Makani. We think we're going to put all three of those in blue. Both of them played two of the last three games. So we feel there's a bit more definition in central midfield. Left wing then remains probably the least certain position. The only player, this is left wing, left attacking midfield, or left forward. Kibu Denny is the only player kind of coded in the position, but he hasn't played it at all. He did play as centre forward once, so it seems to be anyone but him. And we have a real variety of candidates playing over there, so we can't hazard a guess. A lot of times it's players vastly out of position playing on the left wing. So we're going to leave that one blank. However, the right wing, Simon Msuva, we're pretty sure, or he's a definite starter, and we're quite confident he'll start on the right wing, although we did see him starting on the left wing once and only started 2 of the 3 games. But Simon and Suver are confident pick for right wing. Central attacking midfield, again, the only player among those we mentioned here was Mao, playing more in the central midfield. So we've already listed him in the central midfield, Himid Mao Mkami. So we won't list him again here, and we have no further names to add. And finally, for the forward position, Mbwana Samata only started as the centre forward in 1 of the 3 games. Started on the right once, but we do think he'll be a definite starter. So we have him in green, Mbwana Samata. And then finally, we are going to add a special mention candidate, and that's Lusajo Mwikenda. That is the central defender. We saw him starting as a right back in 1 game and as the right back in a 3-man defense in another game. So we think he has a good possibility of starting, but we're not dead sure what position. He seems to be brought in kind of for special positions. Okay, that is our list, and because we're doing this late, we actually are going to go one step further and take a look at game 1 and check our predictions here. Manager Adel Amrouchi, we'll call him a starter there because there's no change to our expectations. Goalkeeper Aisha Manula was the starter in game 1. We thought that was he was the top candidate there. So Kwesi Kawawa, well, we'll see if he's the backup keeper anyway, not a starter. Central defense, very much as expected. It's a 2-man central defense with Mwamnyato and Hamad, the 2. So that is what we predicted and expected. As a left back, it is Mohamed Husseini there. However, he's not in that position because Maroshi is suspended, because we see Maroshi on the field a little bit later, and I might as well deal with it now. Maroshi is lining up as the left midfielder in the 4-3-3 formation. So unless we're misunderstanding the rules, he got a red card in the game against Morocco. Perhaps it was appealed or something like that. The funny thing is, though, he got a red card in this game too, so he will definitely be out for the second game here. Anyway, strange goings on there, but Maroshi, the left back, lining up as a left midfielder, and the backup left back, Mohamed Husseini, getting on the field as we expected, but not for the reason that we expected. Right back, the player coded as the right back, Haji Minoga, is the starter there. So we had him in blue. We weren't sure whether he would be, but he is. 2 of the central midfielders who we predicted as starting, Faisal Salam and Sospita Bajana, did not start. We had them in blue, so we're not really shocked by that. Because we thought it was only possible. Our other kind of possible prediction, Himid Mao Makami, did start. He's in the center of that 3-man midfield. We've seen that Novatus Maroshi, the left back, is on the left side there, and it's Mudathir Yahya on the right side. So again, we're not really surprised by that. He was one of the candidates. I think he was at the likely level one of several candidates who we might have seen start there. The big surprise comes on the left wing. We hadn't dared to guess as to who that might be. We just were pretty sure it wasn't going to be the only player coded as a left winger, Kibu Denny. And it's not Kibu Denny, it's newcomer Taran Alarakia, the new player we introduced. And perhaps equally surprising on the right wing is Simon Msuva not starting at all. We had been very confident in him as a starter, but did not get on the field here. It is actually the forward, Samata, starting as a right forward. Starting as a right forward. So we did think he would be on the field. We thought he would be the centre forward. So that leaves a bit of suspense as to who the centre forward is. I will give you a moment to guess. Okay, time's up. I'm surprised here. It is Charles Mamwamba. That is the Australian-based player starting as the centre forward. There. So a few surprises, especially in the upper end of the field. But conversely, it's not that surprising because we saw that things were fairly unstable up there, a lot of shifting around. So looks like that shifting is continuing. I should address the special mention player, that central defender, Moikenda. We thought he might be starting somewhere on the field, but he didn't get a start either. And we'll just take a look at substitutes here while we're at it. No surprise that Msuva comes in. He comes in for newcomer Alarakia at the 38th minute. So I wonder if that's an injury or Alarakia really didn't satisfy the coach. And then we actually only have 3 substitutions in the game. They're not really significant, so I won't go into them. And that brings us to the end of our look at Tanzania's selections. And again, Tanzania, a team that may or may not make it to the tournament. So hopefully we'll see them next time around, which will give me a chance to wear my shirt again, because I don't have a lot of shirts for the African teams. And if we do see them, that will be in October or November of 2025, because the next African Cup is played in December 2025. So whether Tanzania is there or not, I hope to see you then. We would like to thank Pixabay and Alexei Ivanov of Mappa Music for the wonderful background music accompanying this mediacast.